ARE Podcast, episode number 45.
Welcome to the ARE Podcast. Where it's all about encouraging and inspiring you today so you can fulfill your dream of becoming a licensed architect tomorrow. And now your host, David Doucette.
Hello and welcome to the ARE Podcast, and joined today by our co-host, Eric Corey-Fried. Hello, Eric.
Hey, everybody.
What is special about today's podcast? It's a micro podcast, a new format we are exploring where we are doing 10-minute topics, 10-minute discussions, little micro bursts of information for you. So with that, Eric, what do we have for today?
Well, first up, let's start with a call of the week. And as everybody should know, we do these free mini coaching calls that you can schedule on our website. So in a typical week, I'll end up talking to, 20 different candidates about their problems. And we get a lot done in our little 15-minute calls. And it gives us a great glimpse into the things that candidates are struggling with and, the challenges they're trying to overcome. So,
and let me guess, most of the calls are dealing with technical issues and foundations and slurry walls, right?
Nope, not at all. I think, David and I initially thought that when we would do these free calls that we get a lot of like, hey, what's a CAV double duct system? Calls like that. They are never that. The calls are always about mindset. The calls are always about, oh my gosh, I'm freaking out and I failed my last test and my confidence is shattered and what should I take next and what should I do and how do I schedule this and how do I get motivated? It's none of it has to do with content at all, ever. It's really kind of funny that way.
And so what do we have for our call of the week this week? And then we'll jump into our little topic.
Our call of the week this week is one that I get often, but this one came in the other day, and they had failed PJM. And so their question was, do I retake PJM and keep taking it, keep attempting it until I pass, or do I just move on to the next test? And I get this question a lot. David, you get this question a lot. It comes up in our coaching program too all the time. And then if, there's usually a subset to the question of, well, if I retake PJM, how long do I study? Do I spend another 2 or 3 months restudying everything? And our answer is, you and I are always unified on this answer. The answer is like, no, don't retake it. Instead, move on to study for some other section and then fit in a retake as you go. In other words, make your little testing plan. You're going to take a test every 2 months or whatever plan you have. And then don't let the results or the outcome of any one test derail your plan. So if you fail PJM, that doesn't mean you throw your plan out the window. If you fail PJM, whatever next one you're going to take that one next and just keep going. You got to stick to the plan.
What I like about that question is oftentimes we get questions and oftentimes our answers are, it depends, right? Because it really does depend. This is one of those that it doesn't depend. As you just explained, Eric, no, don't take the retake right away, or don't, restudy for the retake right away, move on to the next one. And then, as you said, fit the retake in. It's a strategy that we have had a lot of success with in our coaching program and our platinum students. So it definitely works, and it definitely keeps somebody moving forward. Because I think, as you can attest to, Eric, the candidates that you hear who are struggling with one particular exam, for example, they will just keep failing that one over and over, and then they exhaust their 3 tries in a year, and there's just no forward movement in their process.
Yeah, and it totally takes the wind out of their sails. It demotivates them. And then it becomes this also almost like an abyss. This giant hurdle that they have to jump over. And so getting them to restart again is a challenge. Getting them to get motivated again is a challenge. And then eventually what happens, because we've seen this thousands of times now, their rolling clock starts to come due, and then they start to feel guilty. They haven't taken a test in 3 years. And then they call us and go, yeah, I bought your materials 3 years ago. Do you have the latest update? It's always that. And it's maddening to me. For everybody, create a test plan, stick to it, regardless of whether you pass or fail each individual one, stick to your test plan, and then fit in retakes as you go.
Perfect. Okay, let's move on to our topic of today, or topic for today.
So the topic then really kind of ties into the call, which is that really, I think most people have been looking at these tests all wrong. They still look at them in terms of silos, especially people that took the old, 3.1 or 4.0 version of the test. And the truth is that they're not that siloed. We have these 6 exams, and they're really part of a larger continuum. And NCARB sees them that way. We know that from working with NCARB, and we certainly see them that way. And we know that simply by, writing our study packages and teaching it all the time. So I think everyone listening should start to see them that way. These are not siloed tests. You don't lose anything by, if you fail PA and move on to another test, you're not losing anything really, because all of it is part of a, basic foundational set of knowledge that you're going to need to know as an architect.
And we know this because we've been successfully coaching for the last few years. It's really boots on the ground, especially you, Eric, with your free calls. You've talked to a few thousand candidates at this point, probably more than a few thousand, actually. And all of this information, it's not what we think. It's kind of what we know and what we've gathered from talking with candidates and successful candidates and not successful candidates in our coaching program.
Yeah. So, if you think about the 6 exams, right? Programming and analysis, PA, the real, the real mindset you need to have there is, what are the problems that I need to be solving? But if you move on to PPD, project planning and design, there it's more about, well, now I'm starting to design. So how do I coordinate all of these different considerations around structure and aesthetics and cost and schedule and mechanical, and make sure that the sprinkler head is not where a duct is or where a beam is. And then as you move into project development documentation, PDD, that's really the construction document phase. And your mindset there is, well, okay, now that I know what we've designed, how do I actually detail this so it can get bid and built? But in all cases of all 3 of those exams, PA, PPD, PDD, you're going to get questions around bathrooms. It's just at a very, very different scale. In PA, you haven't designed the bathroom yet, but the program is saying that they need this many bathrooms in approximately this location adjacent to these other spaces. In PPD, the questions around the bathroom would be around number of fixtures based on code, the layout of the bathroom and the size, making sure you've got ADA guidelines met. In PDD, now you've designed that bathroom and whether that wall is fire rated, exactly the type of tile you're using, whether the toilet partitions go to the floor or not. In all cases, you're getting a question around bathrooms, but just the scale is different, and therefore your mindset should be different.
And this, I think, feeds right into the call of the week we just talked about, is how these tests are not siloed. All 6 relate to each other in some way, shape, or form, which is one of the reasons why we're huge advocates of just taking a new exam every 2 months and fitting in the retake, because things you learn in PA will help you in PPD and vice versa, which is the beauty of 5.0 that we've been touting since it came out. It's a much more holistic approach. I think it's a great exam, and 99% of what we're learning in these 6 divisions we use in the real world.
Yeah, exactly. If you fail PA, moving on to PPD will only help you with your PA retake. If you fail PPD, moving on to PDD will only help you with your PPD retake. They're all part of a larger body of knowledge here, and so they're not siloed like before. In the old version of the test, there was a test called site planning. Well, yeah, that was siloed, man. That was just the questions around site planning and nothing else. One of the other common calls that I'll get is people will complain and they'll go, yeah, I took project management and I got a bunch of, firm ownership questions, and they're mad about it. And I can always tell when people are going to struggle with these exams when they call to complain to me about the questions they got on the actual exam. I got a question around, Gantt charts, but I was taking PA. That's not fair. That's a PJM question. No, it isn't. There is no such thing as a PA question. they're really just, all 6 tests are really just different phases of design. You're going to get questions around elevators on all 6 tests. Is that fair? Yeah, that's within reason. And I think you should anticipate that.
And that's why we're big proponents of taking a new exam every 2 months and fitting in a retake, in between that 2-month period, and just keep plowing forward, keep moving forward. And as you'll hear Eric and I continue to talk about, is it's not about passing your next exam. It's about actually sitting for your next exam, learning from it, and continuing to move forward. And as we like to say, if you do that, you will be licensed within a year. If not, then you'll have 5 down and 1 left. But this is what we've seen in our Platinum coaching program. All right, so that's PA, PPD, and PDD. Now the next 3, practice management, project management, construction evaluation. How should we be looking at those?
Yeah, well, we really think of those 2 different groups of 3. So PA, PPD, PDD are all related. In an ideal world, you would take all 3 in a row. Then there's practice management, project management, and CE. In an ideal world, you would take those 3 in a row. Why? Because if you fail one, moving on to the next one will only help you, right? If you fail project management, moving on to construction evaluation will only help you with your PJM retake. So keep that in mind. But the skills there are a very different mindset. In practice management, you're now the boss. You're now in charge. You're not running the projects. You're trying to keep the firm afloat, right? So your main concern is overhead and cash flow and things like that. Contrast that to project management, where you're a project manager. You're trying to get this project out the door, given the fee that you've been budgeted. You couldn't care less about overhead of the firm, right? You're really worried about hours and staffing and, doing a quality project and making sure that there's no glaring mistakes on the drawings. Very different mindset. And so when candidates call and say, I got a PJM question on PCM, or I got a PCM question on PJ, and they're complaining, you're totally missing the point here. The point is testing you on your judgment of whether you're in that right mindset or not. And then CE is just the construction administration phase. So there, your mindset is not worried about office overhead or even staffing. There, because you're solidly in the CA phase, you're really worried about, how do I observe the construction accurately and correctly, and then ideally protect the owner, sometimes from themselves, and really report whether this project is in conformance with the contract documents or not. Very, very different mindsets across all 6 of these exams, and they're not siloed, but rather a full continuum.
And a good example of difference between project management and practice management I was thinking of as you were talking is, project management, I'm the project manager, I need 8,000 hours to do this project. And I'm strategizing and I'm figuring out, my team and my hours. And then here comes the practice management hat. Well, I don't have 8,000 hours for you. I've got 6,000 hours. So you need to figure it out in 6,000 hours. And project management has no, I need 8,000 hours, and practice management is, well, we can't afford 8,000 hours. We can afford 6,000. So that's kind of the difference. And that's the juggling we have to do. That's juggling firm owners actually do.
Yeah. And you'll notice that in all of these mindsets that we're talking about, there is no good mindset or bad mindset. It is the mindset, right? Each person plays their part, plays their role. And so the firm principal is worried about a certain set of things, and the project manager is worried about a very different set of things. And sometimes they conflict.
Okay, so with programming analysis, project planning and design, and project development and documentation, we have our skills, right? They comprise to compromise, find the win-win, anticipate issues. That's kind of what we're doing with those 3. What are we doing with PCM, project management, and construction and evaluation?
Right. So if PA, PPD, PDD, really the people that do well in those tests are the ones that are good at finding the compromise, the good enough solution, right? Trying to find the win-win. The people that do well with practice management, project management, and CE, they're the ones that are good at decision-making, good at judgments. They have very clear priorities. What we found is that there's almost a very clean break line between, we'll see people that'll pass PCM, PJM, and CE on their first try using our materials. Because to them, it's very black and white, right? Every question they get, it's very clear. But when they switch over to PA, they stumble a little bit. This is very, very common because they're going in with that same kind of black and white decision-making, quick judgment mindset. And instead, PA, PPD, PDD are much more thinking like a designer. Well, this isn't the ideal solution, but this is good enough. This meets the client's needs, right? Finding that compromise. And so I've seen a lot of great project managers that do really well on those first three tests, that when they move into the design tests of PA, PPD, and PDD, they feel like a little bit like a fish out of water.
Yeah. And it's kind of like, I think a big focus of our coaching and the way we work with candidates is understanding your strengths and your weaknesses. I did great on PCM, PJM, and construction evaluation. I can't get PA. I must suck as an architect, right? That's not what that means, right? A failure of PA means one thing. It means you got to take it again. Nothing more than that.
That's all it means.
That's all it is, right? You just got to take it again. That's all it means. And that's what you do. That's why, we build in these sort of expectations of failure, into our coaching program, because they're going to happen and we don't care if they happen. What we care is that, you're taking it every couple of months, you're in the game. And the byproduct of that is that you get licensed. All right, I think this is fantastic. I want to keep these a microburst. So any final thoughts on this, Eric?
Yeah, don't let your plan get derailed by a failure. Remember, the tests have, on average, they have a 54% pass rate. That means of these 6 exams, NCARB is basically expecting you to fail 3 of them anyway. So don't let your self-esteem, your self-worth, your confidence, your momentum, your speed get derailed by a failure. A failure is fine. We call it the F word in the coaching because people get so freaked out about it. But what we've discovered is oftentimes, maybe you had a bad day. Maybe you're stressed at work. When I really dive in with people, what I found is that their failure had more to do with their mindset and being tired, overworked, stressed, nervous more than anything. And if they go back and take it again and read it clearly, you really do probably a lot better.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to end on that. So on behalf of Eric and myself, David, thank you for joining us for our little microburst podcast. See you guys soon.
Thanks for listening to the ARE podcast. Be sure to visit architectexamprep.com and check out our other podcast episodes, video tips, and the ARE blog. Remember to plan, practice, and pass.